Hello everyone! In this lecture I explore in 4 steps, with practical example and analytical scores, some ancient and new ways of teaching Italian solfeggio, reviewing at historical level the birth of solfeggio, the reasons for its usefulness and some proposals innovative to improve spoken and spell reading. In this regard, I will talk about some fundamental methods of early 20th century Italian teaching, for example, Bona, Poltronieri, also Ciriaco, Pozzoli, and so on, and the possible innovations that can arise from the study of this text, favoring young students a fluent and functional reading of music for the acquisition of first-sight reading. First step. What is solfeggio in music education? Well, in Italian music education, solfeggio is a method of sight singing that uses syllables to represent musical notes. It helps develop musical ear, pitch accuracy, rhythm, and sight reading skills. Solfeggio was the foundation of music instruction at the old conservatories, and it was the first subject studied, introducing students to reading music. In this book, published by Oxford University Press, is the first to explain the method of singing melodies to syllables in the old conservatories in Italy. The Italian method was widely disseminated in its day, and it's likely that musicians such as Handel or Mozart would have been trained this way or were at least familiar with it. Written accounts of solfeggio can be traced back to Guido d'Arezzo, or Guido Aretino, in the 11th century, who codified a system of 6 movable syllables that allowed singers to read all of the church modes without too much difficulty. The Guidonian end was a mnemonic device used to assist singers in learning to sight sing. The idea, the goal of the Guidonian hand is that each portion of the hand represents a specific note within the hexachord system, which spans nearly 3 octaves. So the hymn to St. John the Baptist was used by Guido to teach the scale, and listening to the monks singing this hymn, Guido observed that the first syllable of each line of hymn formed one of the sofa syllables of the scale as we know it, and that taken successively they formed a 6-tone scale, the hexachord, ut, re, mi, fa, sol, la, and the scale names given by him have remained to the present. Later, ut was changed to the Italian do. The 7th tone, C, was formed from the 2 initial letters of the 2 last words, Sancte Ioannes. Well, Guido d'Arezzo is also known as the originator of the 4-line staff notation found in Gregorian chant, and his work allowed the ancient and traditional liturgical chants be more easily published, circulated and preserved for posterity. But this is not the time to go around into this topic. Let's go and see the true importance of Guido's method, because the central idea has passed the centuries, reaching up to the modern teaching. Guido's theoretical foundation is knowing the theory. Pupil knowing the theory because the theory helps you sing better and more consciously. Today it can be useful to have students sing this hymn to improve the intonation of the scale and simple intervals. For this purpose, other pieces of the Gregorian repertoire can be taken as other examples. Solve The correct reading of the score is a subject of study, which in turn became a tool for acquiring new knowledge. While there have been exceptions in the past, today it's hard to imagine a good musician who can't read music. It's impossible. And the spoken solfeggio, in Italian terms lettura sillabata, if performed correctly, even if deprived of the intonation of the notes, allows an exact definition both of the single notes to be performed and of their duration and therefore of the rhythm determined by their succession. Now, the second step, historic example of methods. Methods are often very specific regarding the types of skill that are taught, the order in which they are taught, and what activities are most helpful in developing music reading skills. Let's leave aside the problem of musical pitches and focus on the rhythm. Focus on counting. Generally, rhythm is the element of time in music. When you tap your foot to the music, or for example, you click your fingers, you are keeping the beat, or following the structural rhythmic pulse of the music. The rhythm is organized for Italian theory, but now all around the world, into measures, and there are several important aspects of rhythm which are treated in the teaching of rhythmic solfeggio in Italy. Duration, tempo, meter, and beat. In the measure, the Italian battuta, we can hear the pulse or beat. The beat forms the rhythmic skeleton of a measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Generally speaking, there are two types of meter, simple and compound. In simple meter, the beat is divided into two notes. In compound meter, the beat is divided into three. Now, in the following graph, we can observe simple and compound divisions of given pulses. So, in Italian teaching, pulse, division and subdivision are very basically because the beat or pulse, or movimento, pulsazione in Italian terms, was the fundamental background pulse for a measure 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Division for simple or compound meter, it's the lever determining pulse division into two portions or three portions. And subdivisions is the subsequent divisions into smaller values. Example for simple or compound double, for example 1, 2, 1, 2, 1 e a ta 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 a ta 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 a ta 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 a ta ta ta, and so on. Compound double, the pulse 1 1 1 2 3 1 2 3 wa pa ta 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 wa pa ta 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 wa pa ta 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 ta, and so on. Now talking about Pasquale Bona, metodo per la divisione. Italian musician Bona wrote his complete method for division in the 19th century, still used today. And this method has educated generations of students in the correct reading of music and in learning the concepts that are the basis of music theory. The structure of method is with three parts, and let's see some fundamentals of the method asked by Bona. Bona explains that in order to undertake the study of the method, it is necessary for the student to know some elementary principles regarding the correct values of notes and rests. Division consists in pronouncing the name of each note in the same way as if you were reading a word, and during the pronunciation, the voice must be held for the length of time expressed by the figures of the note itself. If this note expresses a value greater than a quarter, the vowel is repeated, keeping it tied as many times as there are quarters of duration. For the rest, Our number is counted or silence, and movements mark the beat. In the case of my student, the student hit a pencil on the desk. First example. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do, re, mi, fa, sol, sol, fa, mi, re, do, si, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do. And the second example. Do, si, la, si, sol, mi, do, re, do, si, do, re, mi, fa, la, si, do, si, la, si, re, do. Studying solfeggio and deepening the rhythm and all the problems connecting to it is of fundamental importance. From a poor study of rhythm, many serious problems arise, which affect not only the course of study, but also the entire process of musical expression. Unfortunately, these methods, like Bona, or for example, the important method written by Ciriaco, are very old. Very old, and cannot be approached with the same didactic spirit as they were 100 years ago. For this reason, I believe that they can still be useful if combined with a new methodology. The first step, a new structured method. If you speak it, you play it. So these old methods can be useful when used together and in a perspective that aims to improve the rhythmic reading of the pupils. The golden rule that should be passed on to children is simple. If you speak it, you play it. The purpose is the rhythmic understanding of the measure. These methods can be used effectively to present some rhythmic problems progressively in two ways. The first, with the reading of each sound written through the single Italian syllable ta. It is equivalent to a sound, an impulse or a note played on the instrument, ta, 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 ta. The second highlights the rhythmic cell, the patterns that make up the rhythm, making the kids listen to the difference between one pattern and another. Nerina Poltronieri's method, structured in 3 books, is still used today in Italian conservatories, and it's effective if the teacher presents the topics concerning rhythm progressively and pay attention to pulsation and patterns. Each exercise proposed by Poltronieri is composed with the intention of making it seem like a real piece of music, a real composition, with the tonality and all the elements that characterize a real piece of music. The teacher can highlight this aspect and improve the pupil's sight reading. For example, it is useful to read the entire exercise with the syllable ta, for improve the rhythm, the lecture of the rhythm, and a second moment, then the student reads the whole exercise more slowly with all the written notes. The first example, a fragment on number 39 from the first course. Ta, 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 ta. And now with the written notes. Mi, so, do. Mi, so, do. Mi, re, do, si. La, sol, fa, mi, re, mi, la, si. And so on. It may be helpful for pupils to think of patterns using keywords. For example, one can speak with the word Roma, a group of two heights. Roma, Roma, Roma. A triple with Napoli, Napoli, and so on. The same thing can be done with compound patterns to put the accent correctly. Roma, Roma, Napoli, Napoli. And in the second example, with regular groups, I will see a fragment of number 65 from the first course.
Ta 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 Roma Roma ma ta 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 Roma 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 ta ta Napoli Napoli ta 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 Napoli Napoli.
Another important method was written by Ettore Pozzoli. This method is used effectively by some Italian conservatories, and in the following example, taken from the second book, the student can read it the first with the syllable ta and then analyze the keys. Ta 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 ta. Mi fa sol la mi fa sol la si do re mi. In the fourth step, we'll see an example of you can work in a modern way. This is my idea, using not just one method, but putting them together by presenting some problems in a comparative way. In addition to this, some exercise taken from Poltronieri can be presented compared to passage taken from literature, example, a composition by Mozart, a composition written by Chopin, or a contemporary author such as Berio, Ligeti, and so on. These solfeggios will always be useful for deepening other aspects during the lesson, such as the intervals or the tonality of the piece. Now working on number 50, Nerina Poltronieri, first course. Ta 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 ta. Ta 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 ta. Ta 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 ta. So, fa, mi, re, do, si, do, re, mi, sol. La, do, fa, do, mi, si, do, re, mi, do. Comparison with Mozart Piano Sonata, beginning of the first movement. Ta, 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 ta. Ta, 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 ta. Ta, 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 ta. So at last, music theory of solfeggio, Italian solfeggio, is aimed on average at children between 10 and 16 years of age, which is why there is a need to convey some contents in an informative and meditative form that could otherwise pass into the background. The teaching must way of being inclusive and by conveying content that is stimulating and interesting at the same time. So the old methods can be used, but with a new view. Solfeggio must be a means and not an end. The problem may concern two levels: the personality of the teacher and that of showing interest in the student, but above all, it is a methodological problem.